Hello, and welcome to Mysteries, Monsters, and Mayhem.
This is the podcast about murders and so much more. We will talk about anything strange, anything that goes bump in the night, and pretty much anything that amuses us.
And on that note, we need to mention that this podcast is not safe for work or delicate ears, so do be discerning who you listen to it with.
We also want to let you know that you can find us on social media. We're on Facebook and Instagram, so look for us there.
I am Shannon Lawrence. I am a writer, mom, wife, student, procrastinator, and you can find me at thewarriormuse.com.
My name is MB Partlow. I am a writer, an avid reader, an organizer extraordinaire, a mom to kids, cats, and a dog, and I call bullshit when I see it.
All right. Hello, guys.
Hello. And this time we won't start in the middle of a conversation
About inappropriate things.
or appropriate things. We'll start at the beginning of what I don't know, but we're always starting something.
It's true. And we're always starting this in the middle of something.
We cannot help ourselves.
No, we can't help ourselves about a lot of things.
I wanted to say, I got kind of an odd compliment this week.
What was that?
I had posted a picture on Facebook. I now have an articulated skeleton. It's not a super expensive one, but it is 5 foot tall. So I put it in the passenger seat when I was coming home. And somebody posted, because I posted a lot of travel pics this summer, and this person said, "You always look so whimsical and energetic."
Yeah.
And those were not two words I would have picked to describe myself, but I decided I liked it.
I was scared when I cut my hair super short. Everybody was always telling me, "You look cute." And I was like, I've never in my life, except up to maybe the age of 7, been told I was cute. So it's really weird as a grown-ass adult to get that one. I don't know how I feel about it still. Yeah. The weirdest compliment I ever got was that I had a great cervix. And I was like, thank you. I don't know how to respond to that. It was from when I was doing IVF.
Well, yeah. I once got told I danced okay for a white woman. In a club. You dance okay for a white woman.
Thank you.
I think I said, thank you. I mean, how do you respond to that?
Thanks.
Okay. Oh, thank you. I'll stick with whimsical and energetic.
Keep it. Keep it and get a badge made. Get a little ribbon for your badge. Yeah.
Get a little charm. I'll get a t-shirt made. Nobody will believe it. Oh, I discovered something else when I was driving. I had on my t-shirt that says, "You call me a bitch like it's a bad thing." Mm-hmm. So here's what I realized. Women will read your shirt and laugh and compliment you on it. Men will read your shirt and look away because they will not, if your shirt says bitch, men will not comment on it. At least men under 70. Because I had a guy who was over 70 commenting all about I had my shirt on that said ambitious.
Oh.
Trying to be a better bitch.
Yeah.
He was like, well, if you put it on, I'm going to wear it. And I said, if I put it on, you're entitled to wear it. Or to read it, not wear it.
Oh, I was like,
if you put it on, I'm going to read it. And I said, well, if I'm wearing it, you can read it.
It's okay. You were looking at the words, not my boobs. You were going to look at my boobs anyway. Whatever.
They're covered. You know. They're catch them quick. They're sliding fast.
I'll tell you what. I posted the other day because I put on an athletic bra that's a size too small, too. That just added to it.
Why
and I was
did you
like,
put on an
I'm going to
athletic bra?
suffocate to death on my own boobs because I worked out.
Good
Now
for
the children
you.
are back in school. I'm trying to do the tapes again.
Good on you.
Yeah. I didn't do great last week. I had like yoga booty ballet. My favorite one, there's a little bit of meditation, heavy meditation at the front, and then there's aerobics, and then there's strength exercises that they're really hard. It's amazing what you can do without weights to actually, and I'm still like, my pecs hurt. And then you do yoga. So you do sun salutations. I don't know, it's poking my pecs, they hurt. Ouch.
People are like,
so it was a good workout.
What is going on?
What's happening there?
We're talking about our boobs and our pecs and...
It's all uphill from fiery poops in the last episode.
That's true.
So
That's very true.
I feel like...
Although, it doesn't get any better than fiery poops. Okay, so anybody out
That's
there
a weird thing to say.
is not familiar with that saying, It's a card in the game, Cards Against Humanity. And one of the cards says fiery poops. And it just cracks me up. And Patrick, who was on last time, I've played Cards Against Humanity with him. We both have several times. And he always saves that card because he knows it will just crack me up. Win. And it'll win. So.
Well, mine is so much more succinct because my favorite is really just bees.
I like that one.
It has a question mark on it. And for some reason that fucking slays me.
Yep.
Also balls deep in a balls deep in a something hog.
And a squealing hog.
Squealing hog. So terrible.
There's also 2 midgets shitting in a bucket.
Yes. The squealing hog one gets me because it was somebody I was playing against some people I didn't know well. Mm-hmm. And then one of them, I didn't even know what a sense of humor this person had. And he couldn't even say it. It took like 20 tries to say it. He was laughing so hard. And so now it's really that I picture. It's not so much the saying on it. Bees is because of this thing. Hey, we didn't talk about shit we read and stuff last week.
We did not. What'd you read?
I read it's a long one.
I know.
How the One-Armed Sister Sweeps Her House by Cherie Jones. It might be Sherry. It's set on an island nation. And I'm not going to say it in case I forgot and it's the wrong one. Because it's not like I read these right before I talk. Anyway, I guess it was literary. I guess that's what it would be called. But it was dark. It was very dark. You follow a couple people's lives in it, but there's one woman who's stuck in like this chain. It's about how it gets repeated over and over and over again. So she gets with a man, she gets pregnant, and he's abusive, and it's just this never-ending cycle, mm-hmm. right? That the mother was in a bad place, and the grandmother was in a bad relationship. The mother got killed by the person who impregnated her, whatever, and so she's not around. And so here she is, again, stuck in this, with this baby. And I struggle reading stuff about abuse and having to get through it, because then I'm agitated the whole time. It's not a relaxing read, is what I'll say, but damn, it's good. And it's beautiful lyrical writing, but you're tracing this. And then on the flip side, at the beginning, her husband, I guess, has killed somebody, most likely. She thinks something has happened, and he's killed this woman. It's not giving anything away. He killed this man in front of his wife. And so we're also following that wife, who now doesn't have a husband and who doesn't know who attacked them, but thinks that they live near there. So she basically is living still in this house on the beach, just waiting for this person to come back, and the paranoia that she has. And then, there's several characters that you're kind of visiting and being with and hearing about their background, but it's a really good book. I recommend it.
Oh, cool.
Not my usual sort, but it was another one of those books that was a recommendation, a staff pick. And like I said, if I go to a bookstore and there's staff picks, I choose one that I wouldn't normally read.
I get it. I picked up and read Billy Summers, the new Stephen King.
Oh, yeah, I saw that everywhere.
It was, I would say you can borrow it, but it's at Lucy's house right now.
I'm not driving to Kansas.
No.
for a book.
I'll tell her when she finishes it to bring it back.
Okay.
Although she has a stack. She has a to-be-read stack. She is her mother's daughter.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought it was pretty good. It's funny because it's kind of a real slow burn. And it's not, there's very little supernatural in it. And basically it's this guy who is an assassin. And he has a job to do, but he has to go live in this town because they don't know when the person he's supposed to shoot will show up. They know for sure he's going to come here because he has to go to trial. But it could be next week. It could be 6 months from now. So he has to kind of be part of this town. And so it's what happens to him. But also, while he's there, his cover story is that he's writing a book. So he goes to this office every day. And so he sits down and he starts typing out his life story. So you've got what's going on in the present, and you also get what happened in his past. And he was, in the Middle East. I almost said he was in Vietnam, and then I was like, no, that he would be too old to be this character. It's a really, really good character study because you come to care about people that you don't think you should care about.
Oh, that's always good.
Yes. So I thought it was a good read. So I enjoyed it.
Yeah. Did you read anything else or did you just read one book?
That's all I'm going to talk about. Did you read another book?
Yeah, and I'm not going to talk about it either because I'm not done with it.
Oh, well, I mean, I have started another book, but I haven't.
Right.
I don't like to talk about it until
I don't talk about it.
So what did you watch on the television?
The television?
The television.
So, American Horror Story came out with this random miniseries before this new season started. Uh-huh. And so I watched the miniseries on Hulu. And it was interesting because it brought back characters from previous episodes, just some of them. It's not like there would be a lot to bring back. And it had the original, oh my gosh, what's his name? It's not Dermot Mulroney.
Oh, yeah.
Dylan McDermott.
Yes.
I always do that with their names. I have to go through it. Yeah, so it's the first episode. They bring him back from that first season.
Because I only watched part of the first season and I went, I don't know why. I didn't like it just didn't hold me. It didn't creep me out. It just did not engage me.
I did watch it, but yeah, he's in there.
Interesting.
I'm trying to think who else. But anyway, they brought back these characters, and then there's kind of a series of characters. People keep moving into the famous murder house. Is why he's in it. So that's the first one.
The Murder House?
The Murder House.
Which Murder House?
The one that's in the first American Horror Story.
That house. Okay.
So it's become a notorious murder.
Well, we did talk about murder houses
last time. Episode. It would have been appropriate. But so, they've got the dark tourists coming in. Everybody gets a kick, but see, they're staying there and they're getting murdered. And then if you die in that house, you're trapped in it. And that's why they're bringing back all these ex-characters. And then
gotcha.
So that they can kill people while they're in there. The ghosts can. And then, there's one night that, I guess it's Halloween, that they can leave the house and go out. And there's a relationship with one of the ghosts. There's this and that. It was interesting.
What was there a title of this?
It really just said American Horror Story, but it's a different one if you're on Hulu than the one that's the actual, right.
I will say miniseries.
I don't even think it said miniseries, but that's what I'm calling it. Because it wasn't a season. It wasn't a regular season. It was just this sporadic extra thing they did, I guess, which was strange. The new season is out now, so I need to start watching that. So eventually I'll be talking about that on here. Did you watch any TV type shows?
I did. I watched the beginning of, because it releases every week. Oh, I saw Reservation Dogs. Love it. And I was singing the stupid Fry Bread song for about 2 days. But I watched the beginning of 9 Perfect Strangers.
Yeah.
With Nicole Kidman and Melissa McCarthy, and those are the only 2 names that I can remember at this moment. Have you watched it?
No,
it's really interesting. Nicole Kidman is this sort of woo-woo guru.
All right. I hope she goes by that title on her name badge.
And I'm trying to think of what her accent is. Her accent is Russian. And she can look so many different ways, but she kind of has this ethereal look in this. And she has this program where people come and for personal transformation. And so it takes one group, and it's Melissa McCarthy is a writer whose career seems to be on the fritz. And then there's a guy who is a famous football player, and I know his name. I can't think of it. He was on Will and Grace, and now he's in all of Melissa McCarthy's movies.
Okay. I don't know.
Tall, dark skin, dark hair. Oh.
I'm not playing this game.
Okay. An ex-football player with a drug problem. There is a very timid Black woman who is just very chipper and is there for this transformation. And let me tell you, because as a viewer, you get to see her face in a couple of shots where the other people around her don't get to see it. That woman fucking terrifies me. I am not.
So she's
even
very
kidding.
timid, but she's hiding a lot of turmoil.
She growled at someone. They did. Oh, she is just absolutely terrifying. There's a young, very beautiful married couple, and there's a family, and it's a husband and wife and their daughter who just turned 21. And a year ago, I can't remember if it was a year ago or 2 years ago, the daughter had a twin brother who took his own life.
Okay.
So they're all trying to work through things, and they're all trying to kind of transform their lives, but it's like, what is Nicole Kidman's character really doing to them?
Uh-huh.
Is she just doing, because they're making all these very specific smoothies for people, and they can't have any junk food, and they can't have any outside food, they can't have any contact with the outside. It's really interesting. It's very, you get to the end of an episode and you're like, oh my God, what happens next? Which is good writing.
Yeah. Yeah. Good.
So,
and is it's being released on the weekly basis
yes,
too? Okay.
Yes, on Hulu.
Gotcha.
So what else did you watch?
Well, I watched movies. I've been doing a lot of Shudder watching. So I watched one called Vicious Fun, which sounded like vicious fun to me, and it was. So it's basically this guy who is not a freaky serial killer accidentally ends up in like an AA meeting, but for serial killers.
Oh my God.
And shit goes very wrong.
Okay.
And that's just what I'm going to say. There's some humor, there's some gore, but it is vicious fun.
It
just
sounds
like
good.
the title says. And then I also watched, Scheisse. I forget which country of origin it is, but I watched something called Kandisha.
How do you spell that?
Kandisha. And it's about kind of it's similar to the Bloody Mary tale, but it belongs to a different country. And I would throw out the one that popped into my head, but I'm afraid it would be wrong, so I'm not going to do it.
Okay.
So anyway, it's the same old story, right? Candyman, Bloody Mary.
Yeah.
You summon this person to help. And so this entity is helping this girl that summoned her, but then she takes care of the one person that she summoned her for, and then she just keeps going with the people in her life.
Yes.
And so they're trying to fight it, and it's just not working. It's very bad. So it was a nice little chilling. Again, not anything new, except in that it was the spin from a different country, different religion, different spiritualism around it. So I thought that one was good too.
Oh, neat. Have you seen Only Murder in the Building on
Yes.
Hulu?
Yeah.
Do you like it?
Oh yeah.
I love it.
It's fantastic.
It is. It's on Hulu. It's Steve Martin, Martin Short, and
Oh no. Selena Gomez? Is it? No.
Or is it Demi Lovato?
Nope.
No.
It's not her. It's
Selena Gomez.
Yeah.
I apologize to both those people. It's somebody who's primarily known for singing, but also acts.
Yeah, she another Disney girl.
But anyway, she's good. And they've
Because Jeff and I were like I know my children were of an age that I watched much of her stuff on Disney when it was there, and she's a good actress, but she's weirdly withdrawn, and I've been struggling with whether that's the character or
I think it's the character.
Like she almost talks like she through her teeth a lot of the time.
I hope. I think it's the character.
Yeah. I don't really like it.
But what I really liked about this, and this is also, I thought it was a movie. So
did we.
Started watching it with Lucy. I'm like, what the fuck? Where's the rest of it? And she looks at me. It's a series, Mom.
Martin Short has a dog. One of those ugly, I don't know, what is it, a French bulldog or something?
Yeah.
And it might be in the first episode, might be in the second. He's pushing it around in this stroller, and it's just got its front legs and paws hanging over. And I was like, my God, I'm in love with that dog. It's so ugly.
And they've had some great cameos. They've had Sting.
Yes.
They've had Nathan Lane.
Yes.
And it's just, so what I really liked about this, I didn't really know what it was about, except it was in an apartment building.
I just thought it was them, and so I watched it.
An apartment building in New York and a murder. So somebody's killed in this apartment building. So these three completely different people who don't seem to like each other, they live in the same apartment building, but prior to this don't know each other. Well, the building is evacuated when the murder happens. So they all wind up at the same restaurant, right? Down the street. And they're all listening to this murder podcast that's set in the rural somewhere. And they decide they're going to do a podcast about this murder in the building.
Yes.
And that's what their podcast is called, Only Murder in the Building. And it's just...
Martin Short.
Oh my God.
He's kind of a slimy producer type.
fussy.
Yes, and always trying to sell the next big thing to get the funding to do the big thing. And so that's his issue. And he's also dealing with bankruptcy, right? And so you've got that where he's trying to get money for the podcast. And I was like, yo, you don't need to spend that much to start a podcast.
I'm like, dude,
he goes and he gets like a movie microphone. At one point he's walking with one of those big ones with the big gray head that it's long and you stretch it out over like a boom mic. Yeah. And I was like, is he really carrying around a boom mic for the podcast? And Jeff was like, yes, he is.
Well, what I loved was when Steve Martin starts playing the concertina. And he's like, don't you think this should be our theme music? It's this little eerie concertina tune. And I'm just like, you obviously
And he's a struggling actor. That's his character.
Yes, he had a big character in like the early 80s. And now that show is off the air.
He keeps quoting it.
Yes. You need to learn how to play the concertina, though, so we can...
No, gracias.
Because everybody knows I have zero musical ability.
I wanted to learn to play the guitar. I did.
Okay.
I got that. My son has my guitar now, so he has to learn to play the guitar, and then he has to teach me.
Ask him to write something, would you, for the show?
Yeah.
And can we call it Fiery Poops?
We should have asked Patrick, too.
The Ballad of Fiery Poops?
Ask Patrick to write us the Ballad of Fire Poops, and he will.
I brought it up. Patrick's listening to this, shaking his head. Maybe. I hope he's listening. He's like, if he's smart, he'll go, I need to listen to the following week's podcast to see what they said
about me. That's true.
I would never say anything bad about Patrick. He's one of my favorite people in the world.
You know what? We're right at, let's be timely for once. Let's do that. You want to do that?
That's a pleasant change.
I'm gonna start already.
Do it.
So exciting.
Do it.
Okay. All right. So I'm doing the Jonestown massacre. And there's a reason behind it. I'll say my sources so I don't forget. History.com, Wikipedia Britannica. There were a billion sources, obviously, for that.
So this is murder and mayhem.
It is. And social justice, unfortunately. I think the parts that people don't know about it. I am doing this because I cannot handle people using drink the Kool-Aid as a political insult.
You were just all about busting the urban legends.
I think if you're gonna play with something and use it to hurt people or to joke with people, that maybe knowing the background of it will adjust that a little bit, because it's not a funny situation. And I'll tell you that I listened to a death tape that they have from it while I was writing a story about it, because I figured maybe this would be some inspiration. And I feel if you think it's funny to say somebody drank the Kool-Aid, that you maybe owe it to a lot of dead people to listen to that death tape then and see if you still think it's funny. But I know I'm being all lectury. Soapbox may not be over. So we're going to start with Jim Jones. Born May 31st, 1931 in Indiana. He wanted to start his own church. So he got self-ordained, which I don't even know what that means. I'm planning on doing that. So I assume he didn't have the internet, but maybe you could go and just file and get yourself ordained or whatever.
You're going to do that?
Yeah.
Why?
And then I'm going to charge straight people extra. That's my plan. I'm going to be LGBTQ plus friendly.
Can we we'll both do it, make it an offshoot of the podcast.
Okay. You have to get married on the podcast and tell a true crime story during your wedding, and we will charge straight people extra for their weddings. Because I feel like some people do that for that community, down with that. And I just want to be contrary. So he earned money any way he could, because he wanted to start a whole church of his. And so one of his jobs that stood out was he was a door-to-door salesperson of live monkeys. And I wish there was more information about that, because I just picture this hulking man with monkeys hanging off of him and going to doors. And because it reminds me of a kid's book that I loved that was called But No Elephants. And there's a pet salesman that keeps coming to this old woman's house, and she keeps taking the pets because she feels bad for them. And she's like, but no elephants, because he's got an elephant always in his car or whatever behind him. And then finally comes, he's like, it's my last one. And it's snowing, and she says, "But no elephants!" And then the poor elephant's out there in the snow stacking up, and you just see in each progressive picture, and then it's just his eyes and, sticking out, and she finally lets the elephant in, and the elephant breaks through the floor. So anyway, it's a whole story, but it reminded me of that, because I see this, him knocking on doors with live monkeys, and I wonder if that wasn't like the inspiration behind the story, because I believe there is a monkey in the story. Anyway. He raised enough money eventually to open the People's Temple Church in Indianapolis in 1955. It was an integrated church. Now this is one of the huge facets that I don't think enough people know. He was very interested he believed in integration, and that is how he got all these followers. I think it was 70-something% of his followers were Black women. Because he was very open about race. He saw everybody as equals. He was very into social justice. And here's a different soapbox. Maybe this is what people can listen to, because you can take everything to extremes, no matter how good you think it is. So anyway, this was very rare for there to be an integrated church, especially in Indiana in 1955. So ultimately, in the 60s, he moves his congregation to Redwood Valley, California, and then to San Francisco, and he starts doing so well, he opens a second temple in Los Angeles. And here's the thing about Jim Jones. He was seen as very charismatic, as they so often are in these stories, right? You cannot be a cult leader and not be charismatic. However, unlike other cult leaders, he did not just appeal to his followers. He had so many power players and politicians basically in his pocket. Ooh. That he had power that other cult leaders do not have. And he made a point, his church would donate money, and they provided programs for locals. They had a drug rehab thing. They had a kitchen for like a soup homeless kitchen? People to eat. Yes. And there's just a list. I wasn't going to list it all, but they were doing these things in the community that endeared people to them, so that people were obviously going to be willing to look the other way, disbelieve things being leaked, right? And he was instrumental in the election of George Moscone as mayor in 1975 in California. He was also associated with Walter Mondale, First Lady Rosalind Carter, Governor Jerry Brown, California Assemblyman Willie Brown, and others. There is a whole, again, laundry list of people who supported him and his church, we'll say in quotes. Jones believed in equality of the races, like I said. He felt America should be a socialist country. He followed Russian and Chinese and North Korean politics because he believed in communism. He was Marxist, and this was all integrated with him for this move to socialism. It was estimated in 1977 that he had over 20,000 church members. Damn. This is also the time that cracks start to show, though. I mean, you can only get so famous, right? Yes. And so big before things start to leak. And former members were making complaints. They were saying they'd been beaten, that he had them give up their belongings, their families, sell their houses, and give them the money to be in this. Ton of other negatives. One of the defectors was found mutilated near train tracks in 1976. It's unsolved. Okay. So, in light of the news coming out, and he had just, by the way, done a big news story and then was found dead afterwards. Ooh. And it was an interview about the People's Temple Church. In light of the news coming out, investigations began and newspaper articles were written. So now he's hitting the news. And they're starting to investigate him. He had a lawyer. He had this whole plan. He was starting to get increasingly paranoid about who was after him and what their plans were. And he and this lawyer made basically escape plans for when the authorities came for them. And they chose Guyana. And he wanted to go there and build a socialist utopia. And he convinces some of the members of his congregation to go there with him. So first he goes out and he made a deal with the government of Guyana, specifically Prime Minister Burnham, for 3,800 acres that he was given free. Wow. And he sent a group out ahead of time so they could get the area ready. They called it was the People's Temple Agricultural Project. In 1977, he and 1,000 plus followers moved out there to join them. what they'd already started setting up.
Mm-hmm.
And by this time, he had coaxed the government in Guyana to break the rules for his people. He convinced them that he was bringing skilled people out and they could help with many issues and that they would bring so much money. He said, we've got all this money we're going to pour into your local. Yes. And so they're all for it. Also, Guyana was having issues with Venezuela, which bordered them. And so this land that they were given was kind of there on the border, and they felt that it would deter Venezuelans from kind of leaking and coming through. So they lightened the requirements for immigration to let these members through, and then later, on his request, made it much harder for them to be able to leave.
Oh.
Yes. So once his members were there, he actually took their passports and locked them away. He took away medications so that he controlled their vital daily medications, and they had to get it from him so they couldn't go somewhere else. He put people to work in the fields 6 days per week from 6:30 a.m. to 6 p.m.
Damn.
So almost 12 hours a day, 6 days per week. With him, he'd also brought armed guards. In fact, in America, as his paranoia grew, he had started wearing sunglasses. So when people see him, he's always in those sunglasses. But that did not stop when he went out to Guyana. But he also had bodyguards. So he moves out there and he was able to convince the government and the prime minister to allow his weapons and stuff through. So he came armed with armed guards. Well, these armed guards then started patrolling the surrounding areas on the land, and they were keeping members in. He started punishing people when they didn't follow orders or do things right. So again, these people came out here for a utopia, for fairness. The government in Guyana was British owned, but there were Black individuals as well as, a diverse group of people that were in the government there. And so he kind of passed it on to his followers as, you will be safe here. Because again, majority of his members were Black. And so he convinced them that this is a safe place. You're represented in the government. I mean, it sounds good. There's no way this is one cult group that I can understand how he was able to get people in there because they were facing segregation and so much awfulness, right, at home. And here's this man who wants to see them matter as human beings, right? Because he sees them as human beings and he's trying to help them. And he says, here's a safe place we can go. And so I really do, usually I don't understand it. I don't get how people can so thoroughly fall for a cult and keep believing in it. But it made sense until they got here and then they were trapped. Then they couldn't go anywhere. So anyway, he screened their external communications. He became addicted to drugs, and he was suffering from both mental health issues and physical health issues. He started having late night meetings that would go for hours. So they would work all these hours, and then he would call them to he had speakers in each of the buildings and stuff so that he could call them all at once and say, come to the pavilion. And then he'd just ramble. He would just ramble for hours. And he actually put a throne in the main pavilion for himself, this big throne that he would sit in.
That's kind of a warning sign.
For real. As soon as he got them isolated, he compared himself to Vladimir Lenin and Jesus Christ. Okay? He reached that point. How these cult people often compare themselves to Jesus, right?
Yeah.
And he said the media were after him, that the U.S. government was after him, and all of them, of course. I mean, it always had to involve them because you have to make them afraid. You have to make them afraid to want to leave. And they were all coming after him. The CIA was after him. He liked to make members watch Soviet propaganda videos. Some they've talked to said it started out and they would get to watch movies. And then suddenly it wasn't entertaining movies anymore. It was all propaganda videos from the Soviet Union. He himself really did the propaganda. Just mumbling, talking forever on the damn overhead system to them. He was trying to convince them.
How exhausted must they all have been?
Always. It was, And he kept saying they needed to ally with the Soviet Union, Cuba, China, Albania was thrown in there. So apparently that was a big communist place or something. And he was actually meeting with them and donating money to people from these countries. He actually had a backup plan that they could flee to the Soviet Union if they came after them in Guyana. So housing was communal. The food was whatever he could import large amounts of because it wasn't good growing land. It was not a good place to live. So there were too many people to sustain with what they were growing for those 11 and a half hours a day in the fields. And so they were living on like beans and rice a lot of the times and not getting real sustenance. So it wasn't healthy. Families were separated. The children stayed together. There was like a children's communal building, right? And the adults were other places. And as soon as they were born, they got to a certain age, they were taken away and they were put in this children's building and other people were raising them. Punishments included being locked in a plywood box and hanging children upside down in a well or setting them in the bottom of this well so they could not get out. I assume it was a dry well from the sound of it.
Oh my God.
They were also all administered beatings. They were all to call him father. The children called him dad, father, but the adults also did. Financial support came from members, with many of them signing over Social Security payments when they came in. It was said he was getting around $65,000 per month in Social Security from his members.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Ultimately, he started having suicide drills in the middle of the night that he would call white nights. And they would wake people up, again, with this overhead speaker thing and command them to go through the motions. And so they'd line up and there would be a big thing of Flavor Aid and punch. And it was grape for the record. And they would take their little white cup and they would drink it down and they'd go through. And afterwards he'd say, this was a loyalty test and you passed it. Yeah. So he's fun. As he began to get sicker and sicker and sicker, it did turn out he had a big lung infection, and he told his followers it was lung cancer. I mean, he blew that up. But his health was going downhill. He lost 20 pounds in a short period of time. He was not doing well. People think he actually wouldn't have lived much longer had the whole thing not gone down. But his wife took over, and she actually lowered the working day to 8 hours per day, 5 days per week. But when they came out of the field, he'd make them attend classes on socialism. He based it off of a North Korean system where people did 8 hours of work daily, followed by 8 hours of study. And then you get a few hours of sleep.
To sleep.
He used methods he'd learned from both North Korea and China to institute mind control. So he was very much brainwashing people. Again, he used a lot of the fear aspects, but also here are the wonderful things I want for you, and here are the wonderful things these countries are doing for their people.
Right.
Which, okay. Family members back in the States grew increasingly concerned when they couldn't get a hold of their relatives. Some of them formed a group just called the Concerned Relatives, something like that. Some of them had left children and other family members behind when they went. Mm-hmm. California Representative Leo Ryan got wind of it, and because they were writing letters to all of their congresspeople and to anybody they could think of, to Carter, just saying, help us. He's taken our families. Something is not okay. Leo Ryan decided to fly to Guyana and find out if it was true, to investigate it on his own. And he
this part I sort of remember being in the news.
Oh yeah, because it's the final catalyst, we'll say. So, people Jones had ingratiated himself to defended him publicly. Harvey Milk sent a letter to President Carter saying Jones was, quote, a man of the highest character, and that the defectors were lying about him in order to damage his reputation. He was
Milk.
Yes.
Wow.
I needed to mention that one. Very vocal about supporting him. Wow. And of course, when he was trying to get into Guyana, it was Rosalind Carter and the other people I mentioned before who gave him reference so that the prime minister would speak to him in the first place. He took relatives and reporters, Ryan did, to Guyana in November 1978. On the 17th, now Jones had denied them entry to the compound, and Ryan was going back this day, and to his surprise, they get there, and Jones says, come on in. I'm going to feed you. We're going to have dinner. We're going to have some entertainment. He lets a select group of them come in, and the others had to wait outside. And he does. He wines and dines them. There's singing. There's entertainment. There's all this stuff going on. And I will say they later found recordings that showed he had basically rehearsed with his followers how to convince Leo Ryan that everything was okay. So he would rehearse all of this first.
I don't doubt it.
So that they could say, hey, it's all good. So, but during the visit, various members start coming up and trying to slip him notes, the congressman, and saying, please help us get out of here. And it wasn't a ton of them. He had 900 something people there, but some of them were trying to get out. And Ryan says, oh, no problem. You can come back with me. I'll make sure we'll get you the documentation you need and you can go home. Because again, they didn't have their passports. He says, anybody who wants to come with me, you can come with me when we go to the airport. We'll call in another plane because they'd come on a very small plane. So they had to call in a second one. And the next day, he stays overnight there. Everything is fine. He left with several defectors. Now, there were a couple members who attacked him, I think with a knife as he was leaving, but they were tackled and taken down before anything could happen. So he didn't get harmed then. And they take their truck out there to the airstrip. And they're waiting for the planes. They're not there yet. They had put out the word, so they had a little Cessna coming for the extra people that were leaving. And one of the defectors, Larry Layton, was coming, and the real defectors, they were saying, you don't understand. This is like one of his right-hand men. He's not leaving. This is not okay. Don't bring him. And Ryan, of course, is like, he says he wants to escape. I'm going to help him escape. So along comes Larry Layton with them when they go, and he's in the truck with them. So Larry Layton boarded the Cessna, the smaller plane with the 5 other people that would fit, because it was a 6-person plane. And the plane begins taxiing. And as they go to turn around, Layton pulls out a handgun and he opens fire on the people on that plane. The senator was not on that plane, for the record. And one of the men on there is able to wrest it away from him. So I don't believe he killed anybody, but he did injure pretty much everybody in the plane. And outside, then you've got the other plane that's waiting for its turn to taxi. And this big tractor trailer comes pulling a thing behind it. And 9 gunmen get within 30 feet of the plane, something like that, and they start firing. And for anybody interested, there is video. It's very short, that because there were cameramen and reporters with the senator, and they were filming when the truck first came up. There are pictures then you see of the truck and the men coming, and that cameraman was killed. So it cut off pretty quickly, but there are a few, I think, seconds of the beginning of it when the people come up. So those 9 men open fire on the people that are just still boarding that plane. And 5 people were killed in that shooting, including Senator Leo Ryan. The planes took off with those who'd managed to get on them safely and left the injured people on the tarmac because they were trying to escape. But they were not shot any further. So the other people, they turned around, they went back to the compound. And while all this is happening, Jones is back at the compound, right? And he felt, even though Ryan said, I don't see a problem here. There are clearly a couple people who want to leave. I'm going to take them and I'm going to leave you guys to your stuff because most people seem pretty happy here. It had worked. But Jones didn't believe him. And so he starts telling his people, they're coming to get us. They're going to destroy our community. They're going to imprison us. Those of you who are of color, you are going to be put in a concentration camp. Oh. And yeah, he's pouring it on. And so he orders the metal tub that they had rehearsed with at White Night, filled so many times, filled with the grape flavor aid. It was dosed with, and this is quoted, diphenhydramine, promethazine, chlorpromazine, chloroquine, chloral hydrate, Valium, and cyanide. It's also believed, because of descriptions that some of the survivors have given, that most likely their food in the last meal they'd eaten had been laced with something to relax them. So possibly more Valium. There's really no way to test that afterwards and know. And he calls them to the pavilion on the speaker system and told them that someone on the plane was going to shoot the pilot. He said, I don't have anything to do with that. I didn't tell him to do it, but he's going to do it. He's going to shoot the pilot on the plane. So obviously he's talking about Layton. And obviously he did too, but whatever.
Yeah.
And he said, we have to be gone. We have to take care of ourselves before the government comes to get us. And so they're told to take the flavor aid. And by this point, they had done it falsely so many times, they didn't know if this was just another drill. Because he would talk. He just talked all the time. There are thousands of hours of tape because he recorded all the shit he did. Oh, right? My God.
And there was no ego involved there at all.
No. And so they took syringes and took out the needles and squirted it into the babies' mouths. Oh. The first person to step up and do it was actually a mom who used the syringe to put it in her baby's mouth, then drank her own and stepped away. But as people then began to actually die, as they started seeing the symptoms of this, obviously people were like, wait, no. No, I don't really actually want to die. And so then here come the armed gunmen who are staunch supporters of him. They're all fully backing him. And they then forced the reticent members to line up and take the flavor aid. And that's when they started. There were at least 70 people were actually killed by injection. They wouldn't drink it, so it was injected directly into them with syringe. And for the record, 304 of the members who died were children. They had no choice.
Yeah, I don't think people realize that many of them were children.
That's a third.
Jesus.
According to articles, it took about 5 minutes to kill the children, a couple minutes for babies, and about half an hour, 20 minutes to half an hour for adults. And it is painful. This isn't they went to sleep. There was a doctor on staff there, and he's the one who mixed this cocktail, by the way. In response to cries of pain, Jones said, quote, "I tell you, I don't care how many screams you hear. I don't care how many anguish cries. Death is 1,000,000 times preferable to 10 more days of this life. If you knew what was ahead of you, you'd be glad to be stepping over tonight." Guyanese officials showed up the next day to investigate after the airport shooting, only to find everyone dead, including Jones. He, the coward, had shot himself in the head. And he was lying next to his throne with a pillow under his head. I just want to put that out there. I just want to be very clear. Though he did kill himself, too. He took the easy way out, and he made sure it was very comfortable for him. Around him are 908 bodies just lying in the grass and the scrub where they'd fallen after they took this poison. Some of them were holding each other. You know, there are tons of pictures if people want to look them up online. You can see the dead people if you want to do that. So there was one other woman shot, and nobody knows why. They think it might have been suicide as well. And I'm like, okay, where was the gun?
So did anyone survive?
33
escape?
people total. 33 people total escaped Jonestown. Some because they were able to flee into the jungle when they saw what was coming up before they were really being rallied in. So several of them had already disappeared earlier that day. Some even while Ryan was still there. They just took off into the jungle. And then several are also, 4 members in Georgetown died by murder-suicide in addition to these, because he had radioed to their Georgetown office, which was kind of the bigger city. I think it was the capital city. And he told them, take revenge on our enemies and then commit revolutionary suicide, because he called all of this revolutionary suicide. And so a mother who was there killed her children with a kitchen knife. She got the kitchen knife, went in there. They weren't babies. One was 11. One was around within a couple years of that. Her oldest was 21. And what she did is she killed her 2 younger children with the knife in the bathroom. And then her 21-year-old daughter killed her and then finished herself off with the knife. This is how brainwashed these people were, that he could remotely radio. Although I wanted to be clear, notice that there were only 4 that said the rest went bye-bye. And there was a group that survived, including, I think, 2 of his sons, adopted sons.
Oh.
He had a collection of adopted, but I think he had at least 1 natural child too. I don't remember. But anyway, they had been sent earlier that day to take money. It was a big envelope full of money to a Soviet person they were meeting with to give them the money. And I just wanted to note, several of the people that died, including John, all of his money from the church went to the Soviet Union. He donated all that so they could continue the good fight. And several of the members, there were handwritten notes found. I think there were like 3 that I saw specifically wrote a handwritten note leaving, this is my last will and testament. I leave my money to the Soviet whatever, blah, blah, blah group. And signed. So they left their money to him. Again, I already referenced this. There's a 44-minute recording. It is called The Death Tape. You can find it online and you can listen to it. It's absolutely chilling because here there is a portion of it that there's one woman who said, but why don't we just flee to the Soviet Union instead of killing ourselves? Why don't we just go? Why do we have to kill ourselves? And she was angrily shouted down by other members. Okay. So
wow.
Again, they were so thoroughly brainwashed. She ultimately shuts up. But then you just listen to him ramble into this microphone. And in the background, you can hear the crying. You can hear people calling out in pain.
Oh.
But mostly for me, it's the fact that you hear all these children and babies crying. And then as you listen to this tape, it just goes quiet. You hear these last cries.
Oh.
And so you are literally listening to people dying behind him. And what's worse than that is they have to listen to his fucking mouth running about all of this stuff while you're dying in pain. These children didn't know why this was happening to them. Their parents gave it to them for the most part. So, and again, I did mention this before, other than the death tape, there are over 1,000 recordings of his.
Oh my God.
He's giving sermons. He's talking to his followers. He's raving about the government out to get him and out to get them and the concentration camps. It's all propaganda. It's his own form of propaganda. And again, he learned it from governments that did that shit, right? So the bodies were returned to the U.S. by plane. So people had to process them on that side. They were not all autopsied. In fact, a small number of them were, which led to a lot of conspiracy theories later. But when you got a big group like that and they've been bloated in the desert heat, and you've established, all right, we see that some of them were killed with syringe, but they all seem to have died from this poisoning, except for the 2 that were shot. So anyway, they're sent back, and then they have to be processed on this side for burial.
Oh.
And there were a lot of people who worked that who ended up with insanely severe PTSD.
Well, yeah.
That's over 900 bodies they had to process, including over 300 children.
Oh.
So, and I don't even want to imagine, because they weren't embalmed till they got to the U.S., what was in those bags. But Larry Layton is the only person who was charged in any way with this, obviously, because everybody was dead, but he was not. He was captured.
Right.
And so he had federal charges pressed on him. They actually couldn't charge him with murder because it didn't happen in America. So it was this twisted, they had to use this federal law about basically conspiring against protected U.S. citizens or something like that. And that's all they were able to hit him with. He was paroled in 2002.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. I know. I was like, whew, anything after 2000, you're like, what?
Is he still alive?
I didn't see. I couldn't. Yeah, I don't know.
Because he
That's quite a while.
doesn't need to be.
No. Nope. Prime Minister Burnham in Guyana was publicly accused of being responsible for the deaths due to his personal involvement in breaking rules for Jones, but obviously nothing could be done. So it was just basically a public, you, and a finger pointing. One of the people...
Stern talking to.
Here's the thing. There were more victims afterwards. So one of the people who'd been sent away ahead of time, one of the people that got sent with that envelope, ended up committing suicide after the events of Jonestown.
I'm not surprised.
The family members of one cult member were killed in 1980. They do think it was that person who did it, but the case is considered unsolved. There is no proof.
They do think it was who that did it?
The person who'd been a member. They were the founders of a group called the Concerned Relatives. So they were the ones who actually founded that and fought. And in 1984, a former temple member whose entire family died in Jonestown, siblings, parents, they all died. He lived. He, from his second floor bedroom window, fired on an LA elementary school, killed 2 people before committing suicide. Injured more, but killed 2 at this elementary school. I think I remember hearing about that. I don't remember hearing it being connected to the temple. So there are a crap ton. Like, this is a hole, if anybody wants to read about it, that you can easily fall down. There are so many conspiracy theories surrounding the Jonestown massacre, including it was actually mass murder committed by the CIA. There's actually a Soviet book that puts out the Soviets have been doing this disinformation.
Yes.
It is a known tactic of theirs. They've done it for a long time. So they were the ones that really put forth the CIA thing, and this book was published completely about it. Other conspiracy theories are that the Soviets killed everyone because they were out there to meet with them, that the entire settlement in Guyana was a CIA mind control experiment from the get-go, that Jones was maybe a CIA agent, etc., etc. It was also said that PM Burnham actually had everyone killed to cover up sex drug rings he was part of with it. And it goes even more plungy hole if anybody wants to go in there, because there's things about, because fewer than 200 bodies were actually really autopsied, that those are the only bodies there, and that the other people were rounded up and killed and brought back and their bodies left there. It's just, there is straight up insane stuff, but it is fascinating. I could have done that for hours. But
do you think after this was when we saw because I seem to remember, not that I was as big a consumer of media then as now, But do you think that was when we saw the uptick in, you saw the plot line of parents were hiring people to deprogram family members who had joined cults?
I thought that came later. I thought that was more an 80s-ish thing. But bear in mind, I was 1 when Jonestown happened.
Yeah.
So
you don't know.
I don't know.
And I don't know. And I don't think it was an immediate, like, that day. But
No. But yeah,
but
gradual awareness.
Like cults became much bigger. Remember the Moonies and...
Yes, I did. I read an article about it being this plus Koresh.
Yeah.
Plus another big one that really triggered the cult awareness in the U.S., but it took these big. So this Jonestown massacre, as it's called, it was called a mass suicide, and I think more awareness has finally come. There are survivors. There are documentaries that are available now for people to watch where they talk to the survivors, and it did finally start being called more of a mass murder. So the Jonestown massacre was the largest loss of U.S. life in one fell swoop, basically from one event until 9/11. 9/11 stole that thunder, but it existed then for decades.
I remember reading a Scandinavian mystery. I can't remember exactly which country it was from. But one of the characters, the book opens in Guyana, in the Jonestown.
Right.
And it was someone who ran away. It was one of those people who ran away that morning or the day, but right before it happened, who ran away. And I can't remember how it all ties in the end. It does, but it's like you get that and then the book starts and there doesn't seem to be an immediate connection.
Okay.
But it does come around. It was I wish I could remember because it was really well written.
There was something called, it was like the CAN or something, and it was this organization that was created in response to Jonestown, and they kind of were the experts on cult. Mm-hmm. It was the Cult Awareness Network or something like that. I didn't write it down, and they actually were major informants. Like they worked with the FBI on the Koresh thing and all of that, and were big on educating them about children who are kind of victims in the cults. So that there was awareness, but obviously it didn't go well with Koresh. So I don't know how well their advisory was, but they did get disbanded because of a bunch of issues not long after Koresh. But there were organizations that got created because of Jonestown directly that had impact, obviously, for decades. I don't know how much longer Koresh was after. I mean, was it the 90s or...
I don't remember. I was going to ask you because you always know.
Not this time, but it was a ways after,
Yeah, it was. There was quite a span in between there because I just vaguely have memories of hearing about the Jonestown massacre and maybe seeing a photo on TV of covered. Sheet covered bodies.
Yeah.
But now I became more aware of it as I got older, but I don't remember anything about it at the time. I was not 1, but neither was I, 20.
Right. At an age where you were
I'm not that much older.
Pursue it. But yeah, there's pretty graphic photos that are available out there too.
I do not want to see them.
I watched one of the documentaries and I don't remember what it was called. I think it came out in 2008, something like that. But it was a really good one and eye-opening. And they actually took, I think, at least one of his sons back, one of the pilots that was there that day on the airstrip. And they went back. And it's while local residents did kind of go in and steal things, they were very afraid of it because of what they were like... Nobody moved into it.
There's so much death
even though there was this
there.
big compound, they were like, fuck no. But they stole some things. But this group of people on the documentary did go back and they found what they think was the metal tub that was full. They found an old rusted car. They found...
Can you imagine being his son?
No. You imagine being left behind to deal with that? Because we all know that people tend to attack the innocent people that were involved in this. I mean, isn't that the basis for there's something wrong? We got to talk about Kevin. What is it? Damn it. I think we have to talk about Kevin. Something like that. Or it's a mom left behind after her son goes on a killing spree at his school, and how much vitriol and victimization occurs for her because people hate her because it's her fault. So, you know, we go after victims here. And even people who willingly took the flavor aid, I question how many knew it wasn't just another drill until, again,
people started dying.
Right. And B, there were armed men, so it was get shot or drink it, and they probably thought it would be easier on them to drink it. And you don't know. You don't know what cyanide and it was it's not even, we could look up the cyanide side effects, but it was a cocktail.
Yeah, it was a whole bunch of shit mixed together.
Then the people who witnessed it. There's two people who lived. One of them was super deaf, and so he just didn't hear when the call came over. So he was just chilling. Then he saw some shit and went, and he walked into the woods and just nobody saw him. And then there was a elderly woman who woke up, said, and just hid under her bed. And so she lived, got up and walked out to the jungle after everybody was dead. After the sounds had stopped. After she couldn't hear Jim Jones babbling over the thing anymore. Those were two of the people that lived. There's stories about several individual people, but those two were, and he just didn't hear it.
I like that. He was deaf.
He was deaf and he did not hear the call. And he must have been in the building alone or something at that time because they were all kind of rambling.
Oh, maybe he was in the bathroom.
You don't know. And so he's like, where'd everybody go? Oh, they did. That
does not look like fun. What they're doing over there does not look good.
Yeah. I don't think any children escaped. I think anybody, you'd think one parent would try and get their kid out. But maybe they did, and I just don't remember or know. Yeah. But you're going to talk about something lighter.
Yes, I am. I'm going to talk about a couple of things. I'm going to talk about my inspiration for this. So I'm going to talk, this is strictly mayhem. So I was in the presence of Thing One, and we were talking about the podcast. And I said, I think you had told me what you were going to do. And I said, I need to find some mayhem. Because, I do, and we all know I do the lighter stuff and the wacky kind of weird.
I mean, you did Holmes.
But I did.
For the most part.
Yeah. So she looks at me and she goes, have you ever seen Puppet History?
No.
I said, I have not. I'm like, what the fuck is Puppet History? It is pretty much what you think. It is a puppet, like an a hand puppet is the host. And then they act out a historical event, but those are like little stick puppets. And then there are two live people, and they're on Zoom, of course, right now. And they do a couple of minutes, and then they stop and have a quiz about what do you think happens next. And they try the two live people are trying to win the quiz so they can be the king history nerd. So, or queen.
I find it fascinating how many ways we've come up to entertainingly teach history, and it still doesn't work.
Well, so Lucy says, wait. And she puts on the one about the Boston massacre. And of course, I scored perfectly on all the questions. But because I watched that one first, I realized they do research this. This isn't complete bullshit. They did research it, and
like we do complete bullshit like us.
No, we do research. So they did. They had facts, and I mean they had stuff that you would double check, but yeah, all their stuff on the massacre was all stuff that I knew. Cool. So my sources for this are Puppet History on YouTube. Oh my God, watch it. It is hilarious. The Smithsonian Magazine, History.com, Wikipedia, and Runner's World magazine.
All right.
So I'm going to talk about the 1904 Olympic Marathon. You should see the look Shannon's giving me right
involved?
Now. There are no axes involved. I know, it's the 1900s and no axes. What is wrong with me?
Hey, by the way, I meant to tell you there is like a dedicated podcast, like old timey murders or something to that. And I was like, you would love that.
I would.
I haven't listened to it, but I heard about it.
I love me an old timey murder.
I know. It's like you can get ideas too.
So now I understand that this is late because had I known this story existed, I would have talked about it while the Tokyo Olympics were taking place. That would have been topical, and, But I have and I will confess, I am not I don't pretend to be any kind of expert about the Olympics. You know, I'm not a big, I watch it occasionally, but I'm not one of those people who's glued to the set all day long. Mm-hmm. So I had no idea about the interesting and checkered history of the Olympic Games, which I don't have the time or the stamina to completely cover.
No, it's been going on long enough. It's been through every awful phase in our history.
There's probably an entire podcast somewhere devoted just to the Olympics, and I would say deservedly so. It's not going to be my podcast. But
or if not, perhaps you've inspired somebody.
Yes, perhaps someone who is that passionate would like to start. Holy shit, there's so much. So I just pulled out, in honor of Thing 2, these are fun facts, as she would say.
Yeah.
Olympic fun facts. In 67 AD, Emperor Nero entered the chariot race and declared himself the winner, despite falling off his chariot during the event. There's certain past presidents, that I'm like, oh, I'm glad he didn't hear about that.
Frankly, if you read up on Jim Jones, he'll remind you of a certain past president as well.
In 393 AD, the Olympics were banished as a pagan festival. This was after they had been going on for 12 centuries.
Fucking pagans.
Well, I believe it's the Christians who...
I figure I say fucking Christians enough, really, honestly,
That's true.
In my day-to-day life.
So, the Olympics were revived largely due to the efforts of Baron Pierre de Coubertin of France.
Oh.
I'd never heard... He deserves some credit here, and he will be mentioned later. Also, this just tickles me. Tug of war was an official Olympic event from 1900 to 1920.
Awesome.
Tug of war.
And their weird little 1900s unitards, perhaps.
So, to talk about the Summer Olympic Games in St. Louis in 1904, you first have to talk about the Paris Olympics of 1900. They were connected to and overshadowed by the World's Fair, leaving some spectators, organizers, and athletes confused about what events were actually Olympic events. One woman died without knowing she was the first woman to win an Olympic medal because she was not aware that it was what she competed in was an Olympic event. This is what we call a clusterfuck.
Yeah.
Hurdles for the track and field, hurdles were made of old telegraph poles. The final hurdle was a water jump. Swimming events were held in the Seine River, and there were two problems, one of which was the currents could carry you past, where you needed to go, and it gave unbelievable times because they were swimming with the flow of the current. So they were like world records. Everyone had a world record because they were swimming with the current.
That's great.
Plus, there was an obstacle event, a water obstacle event, that included both swimming under and climbing over boats. I'm like, you know what? I would watch that.
I would watch it, yeah.
Only 2 teams competed in cricket. Cricket was an Olympic event that year. A British team and a French team that was made up of British expats.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
That's great.
So, the marathon. The 1900 marathon. The course was so poorly marked that many runners got lost and had to double back. The course wasn't closed, so runners had to contend with angry bicyclists, pedestrians, and animals. So keep in mind, I love the fact that you're laughing already.
Bicyclists.
So keep in mind, this was a good year. So, 1904. Olympic officials are worried that the games will again be overshadowed by the World's Fair. Because the Olympic Games are the athletic competition, but the World's Fair has just fucking everything. Including mass murderers, we learned last week.
Right. But I mean, the Ferris wheel was basically invented the giant Ferris wheel.
They invented the ice cream cone and cotton candy.
So much. Again, if you read that Eric Larson's book, illuminating.
Yes, it's fascinating. And the World's Fair had its own sporting event. They even got I think I deleted this one reference, the United Association of Athletes to withdraw some of their athletes from the Olympics to compete in their events. So
that's funny that you said you do. I do that all the time. All those random facts that I throw out then is stuff that I deleted to streamline it, and then I remember it and I say it anyway.
And throw it back in. So one of the terrible things, I could not believe this. When I read it, I was just like, this can't even be real. Okay. The World's Fair had, I call it the cringeworthy anthropology days. Oh. So that consisted of non-white savages recruited from the fair's international villages, competing in events like greased pole climbing, ethnic dancing, a mud fight, along with other athletic events and games they'd never heard of, much less played before. It was a cheap ploy to demonstrate white superiority. Yep. You can't tell, but I've used my fingers and done air quotes like 17 times.
It's like a little workout.
It is. I have very muscular fingers now. So remember Coubertin, who the Baron from France? He was pissed. And he even said, this is a bunch of bullshit. I don't know who you people think you are, but you're stupid. And when you finally allow these people into the Olympics, they're going to show you that the white race is not really superior.
As they have.
So how bad was the 1904 marathon? It almost caused the marathon to be removed as an Olympic event. Completely taken off the table. So back then, the distance was not standardized. So this particular one was 24.85 miles, which I think is slightly longer than the standard is now. Or shorter. It's 26 Anyway, it was not standardized. Every Olympics set their own. They're just like roughly make it this far. Okay.
Run to that tree over there.
So the competitors were a really mixed bag of people. It's like seasoned runners and almost passersby that they just picked out of the crowd. Some were recognized.
As long as they were white men.
Mostly.
Oh.
Yes. Some were recognized marathon runners who had won like the Boston Marathon. American Fred Lors did all of his training at night because he worked during the day as a bricklayer. So think about how determined you have to be if you work all day. I mean, because a bricklayer...
That's physical labor.
That's hard physical labor. This one kills me. I don't know why. This one just makes me laugh so hard. There were also 10 Greeks who had never run a marathon.
Where did they get the Greeks?
I don't know. There are 10 of them. I'm like,
random Greeks.
And there were 2 men from the Tswana tribe of South Africa who were in town for the South Africa exhibit at the World's Fair. One showed up and ran barefoot. Their names were Len Tao and Jan, or it might be pronounced Jan, Mashiana. They were the first Black Africans to compete in the Olympics. And they were not trained runners, but they had both served as long distance messenger runners during the Boer War.
Cool.
So they were tapped.
Right.
Come on in. There was a Cuban. His name was Felix. He was a former mailman. So he ran and did exhibitions all over Cuba. He walked from one end of Cuba to the other to raise money to get to the United States to compete in the Olympics. So he gets to the United States and goes to New Orleans on his way to St. Louis and loses all his money gambling. So he had to walk and hitchhike to St. Louis. Barely gets there in time. So he arrives at the starting line in long pants, a long sleeve dress shirt, a hat, and regular street shoes. So some good Samaritan found a pair of scissors and cut his trousers into shorts. Frank Pierce from the Seneca Nation was the first Native American to compete in the Olympics. The race began at 3:03 p.m. on a 90-degree humid day. St. Louis, Missouri. Fucking 90 degrees, and it was probably
humidity.
90% humidity, and it started at 3 in the peak heat of the day.
Yeah, exactly. Not, say, 7 a.m. perhaps.
Yes, or midnight, Yeah. Give the night runner a leg up. So the course let's talk about the course. So they had built a stadium. So the course started with 5 laps around the stadium and then taking off on a course that included 7 hills, which were 100 to 300 feet high, some with what were called brutal inclines. The roads were inches deep in dust, and some of the roads were covered with cracked stone. And they made it sound like it was on purpose that they were covered with cracked stones to make their footing difficult. Or they had to pick
no,
that's not what it's about. The courses weren't closed. So ahead of the pack, you have like press and
people
officials
milling about,
kicking up more dust. Some cars carried coaches and physicians, traveled alongside the runners, kicking up more dust on the people behind them. Now, here's the really good part. There were only 2 sources of water for the runners. A water tower at mile 6 and a roadside well somewhere near mile 12. James Sullivan, remember that name, organizer of the games, all-around sadistic bastard, and a misogynist. He later got women, or at least American women, banned from the Olympics. Wanted to limit the athletes' access to water to test the limits and effects of dehydration.
It's not an experiment. It's
they knew back then. They knew back then that dehydration could kill you. Of course, he wasn't out there sweating his fat ass off. Now was he? But this still gave him enough experience to later write a book on marathon running, where he still extolled the virtues of not eating or drinking anything while running. He actually wrote a book on how to run marathons.
Great. I hope it's still in print so that he can continue educating the masses with his
I hope he choked on it.
Great knowledge.
So, William Garcia of California was almost the first Olympic marathon fatality. He collapsed and almost died. His esophagus had filled with dust. His stomach lining had ruptured from the coughing, and he was hemorrhaging badly. And he actually laid there for a bit before they found him. The previous year's champion, John Lorden, was down with projectile vomiting within the first half a mile. Len Tao, one of the South Africans, was chased off course for a mile by wild dog. A mile.
Yep.
Felix from Cuba, remember him? Mm-hmm. He was making good time despite the fact that he was frequently stopping to chat with spectators. He even swiped a couple of peaches from one car full of people. He's like, hey, give me some of those peaches. And they're like, no. And so he just grabbed a couple and ran off eating them. I think he was actually there. One of the articles suggested that he was probably hungry if he didn't have any money.
Yeah.
To travel on. So he ran by an apple orchard and stopped and ate some, which gave him cramps.
Yeah.
So he laid down and took a nap.
All right.
Now, Fred Lors.
He went through so much to get up there.
Fred, who did all his training at night, third of the way in, hopped in a car and rode for 11 miles.
No!
Now, first, I'll give you the story. He waved at spectators and fellow runners as he drove by in the car, and he ran the final, 5 miles and finished first. And everybody was cheering, oh, da, 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 you know. He got a wreath from Alice Roosevelt, the president's daughter. He was about to get the medal lowered around his neck when somebody came running in and said, no, he cheated. He didn't really win. He later said he was only joking and he wouldn't actually have accepted the medal.
Yeah, right.
So there was a lot of, oh my God, he cheated. It turns out later they think what he did was he just wanted out of the race. So he asked his team for a ride back to the stadium. When the car broke down, he ran the rest of the way back. So it looks like maybe he really wasn't.
Really was. Then
intending.
It was funny because everybody's cheering.
And he just thought it was hilarious, which admitted it was. So originally, he was initially banned for life from ever competing again. But after tempers cooled, it was repealed to a 1-year ban.
Okay.
Because he competed in the Boston Marathon the next year. I mean, they're really going to ban him from running. I'm like, really? Are you going to break his feet? Because otherwise, how can you stop someone from running?
now I'm wondering what I think it was the Boston Marathon where that woman ran in it and they were like trying to push her off and knock her over.
And the other runners were like, fuck off.
Yeah.
And
Some of them.
Yeah.
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 I think how much later that was, and what was it? It wasn't Fred Laurie because he was anyway. That one guy was there.
So Thomas Hicks. Wait till you hear about this poor bastard. Thomas Hicks from Boston had a training team driving alongside. They refused to give him any drink, but did sponge his mouth with warm distilled water, and they kind of sponged his head and shoulders with water. They wouldn't let him drink. You can look at this wet sponge, but you can't have it.
Like, he just had a team.
Yeah. I think, I don't know how it works. So 7 miles from the end, they started giving him a concoction of egg whites and strychnine.
What?
It didn't kill him. At that time, small amounts of strychnine were used as a stimulant. So this is the first, probably, maybe, incident of doping at the Olympics. And one of the reasons why they came out with the rules of no drugs. They also had a flask of brandy, but were holding it back to see if they would really need it. So, Hicks was fading fast. You know, your own team's poisoning you. What a surprise. But he perked up when he heard that Lors had been disqualified. Mm-hmm. So, the trainers dosed him again, this time washing it down with brandy. And they doused him in water. They're still not letting him drink water. He sped up, but the descriptions of him, he was running mechanically and glassy-eyed like an automaton.
I wonder
and
why.
He was pale and gray. They kept talking about how he looked gray while he was running. And his condition deteriorated. He began to hallucinate. He begged them to let him stop. He begged for water. He begged them to let him lay down. His team actually got one on each side of him and lifted him up and carried him over the finish line, and his legs were still moving like you do with a little kid.
Dog or whatever in the pool.
In a pool. That's exactly what I was thinking. He lost 8 pounds in the course of the race.
What? Lord.
He was attended by 8 doctors before he could stand up and leave the stadium. This is one
poisoning him in slow-mo.
So, 4 nations. Okay, this is how unpopular the Olympics were then. Only 4 nations even entered the marathon. There were 32 people representing 4 nations who entered the race. Only 14 finished. That is the worst record of finished to entered ever.
You have to run 6 miles before you get any water.
The Cuban who took a nap finished 4th.
Holy shit. Maybe it's hotter like in Cuba. I feel it is. So perhaps he was just used to that shit, and also he just hitchhiked and walked up up the Mississippi or something. I don't know.
So the two black South Africans finished in 9th and 12th places. And I would like to point out that the white competitor from South Africa never finished. And 3 of the inexperienced Greek runners did finish the race.
I mean, didn't the Greeks do Olympic stuff like way back?
That's where it started.
Yeah.
So at least 3 of them who had never run a marathon before, at least they finished. While 3 of the Americans who were previous Boston Marathon winners didn't even finish the race.
Wow.
That was just, and I heard about this. I highly encourage you to watch the Puppet History episode because it is a riot. They also talk more about the World's Fair and the devious things that the World's Fair was doing to take spectators away from the Olympics. And I was like, that was just crazy. The man who napped finished 4th. The man who was poisoned finished 1st. And the one dude running with no shoes, at least he finished.
Right.
Out
of 14.
Yeah, and the guy who ruptured his stomach coughing, there was that much dust. The fact that they couldn't look and go at the cars and go, wow, no, we have to take the cars out.
something sensible.
Yeah.
Something. Good Lord.
I can't even imagine.
And this is the Olympics at which the term clusterfuck was coined. Not really. Don't quote me on that.
But it might have been when the term chucklefuck came into common usage.
In a private conversation.
This chucklefuckery.
What a mess.
So I'm like, I can't believe, because the marathon, that has all the prestige and marathon runners and and they're the elites. And just that it was such a hot mess that the man in charge was like, I picture him with a snidely whiplash mustache that he's twirling the ends of. And he's like, let's fuck him up and not give him any water and see what happens. I'm like,
were you ass? Like, why?
Were you related to H.H. Holmes? I mean, God. Right?
Let's experiment on these people in the middle of an Olympic event.
Yes. And so, yes, we have a little throwback to the World's Fair.
Me too.
From the last episode.
I need to find like another good book but doesn't just trace the one World's Fair. It kind of traces a bunch of them.
That would be very interesting. Yeah. I think.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to ask the question.
Yay. We have a question. We thought it up ahead of time.
Usually, we're better at that at our second episode of the recording. Our question is, did you watch the Olympics as a kid? And what's your favorite event? Because, we were discussing, it was a big thing. My family watched the Olympics. Yeah. We also watched the pageant each year, Miss America or whatever. Yep. There were certain things that we kind of just did every year we watched the Oscars every year. Yes. And it's just a non-thing now.
I don't think I watched any of the Tokyo Olympics. I mean, if I was out somewhere, not like I go out a lot, but if I was out somewhere and it was on a screen, that's what I watched.
But I didn't turn on. I think I watched a couple videos people posted. Yep. Like there was synchronized swimming as an event, and I was like, hell yeah. I'll watch some synchronized swimming. That's fascinating.
But I did not tune into it like I have in the past.
No. And really, it's been a long time because there was... Oh, shoot. I'm not going to know their names. There were two women in volleyball that, I watched some of their stuff when it came on years ago. It's not Carrie Strug. I think she's a
gymnast.
A gymnast, yeah. So, but I knew their names for a while even, too. But it was just stuff like that. Like, if there was somebody that I heard was interesting, that I might look it up.
Well, what I liked this year was all the attention that they put on their uniforms and what the male beach volleyball team wore versus what the women were forced to wear. No woman ever says, I would like to go play in the sand in a thong.
So what I read was that there's something called volleyball and there's something called beach handball or something. And that team that was wearing the basically nearly a thong. And by the way, I read what the restrictions were and it literally must be this many inches from the hip and stuff. So they're purposely putting these women in these ridiculous. Tiny. They're not even full bikini things. No. They look completely irrational, but it's so their ass cheeks will hang out. But anyway, it was the handball, and that there are different rules for volleyball where they can choose to wear the shorts, but that this beach handball or whatever the heck, it might not have been handball, but it wasn't volleyball. It was like some other different kind of, so they wore shorts to fight it.
Yeah, and the side-by-side pictures with the men's uniforms and the women's uniforms are absolutely ridiculous.
Well, and they've been trying to fight it for years, the women in this group, and keep getting turned down and told, no, this is the uniform. And there's no reason they need to be on exhibition. They're supposed to be exhibiting their Olympic prowess, not their ass cheeks. Yeah. That's killing me. Is that we still have so many archaic patriarchal things that control so much, and it's every single time it's a fight to fix it. There's never an easy fix. There's never a, hey, have you noticed that this is set back, this stupid rule is around, there's no rational reason we don't play better because our ass cheeks are hanging out beyond the weird thong that you have us in. But it just, reading the actual description of what the uniform was blew my mind.
Yeah, and it's not like they can go to the officials and go, hey, this is outdated and it isn't working.
Because the officials don't give a shit.
Oh, okay.
No. They have to file every single year, and they've been turned down every single year for a change to these rules. Stomach's growling.
It's getting on toward dinner time.
It is. It's almost 7. So,
oh my God.
Yeah. But, that was just pissing me off. I did. I went and I researched it, and I read the requirements, and I read the stupid board or whatever it is, the response to it.
There were some other sports that were comparable sports, and the women are expected to wear much tinier outfits. I can't...
Yeah. But then the ones who fought successfully, again, over years and years and years, have gotten it. So they can choose to wear, like, boy shorts. And I'm sorry, those seem to make more sense because you won't have to be picking them out of your crack the whole time you're playing. Unlike the stupid, even a normal bikini, if you're being active, you might have to pick it out. How stupid. Just let them wear boy shorts.
Let them wear whatever they want to wear.
It's so
I mean,
weird.
yes, wear a uniform.
What a weird hill to die on.
I know.
But
somebody, who was it who paid their fine?
Oh, was it Pink? I don't remember for sure.
Pink
I thought it was.
It might have been Pink.
I think it was somebody I know of, and I really don't know Lizzo except for hearing about her. I thought it was Pink, but I don't know.
It could be. But yeah, they got fined for not wearing the standard uniform, and she just is like,
I'll pay it.
Here's a check. Here you go.
Awesome. Yeah. So anyway, write to us. You can answer that question, or you can send us your own stories about any damn thing you want to.
Please do.
And that can be to mysteriesmonstersmayhem@gmail.com or using the form at mysteriesmonstersmayhem.com. And
interact with us on Facebook, like us, recommend us, share us.
Review us.
Review us.
Yeah.
Tell people how much you love us.
It all helps get the word out a little bit more because algorithms.
Yes. and maybe we could get a sponsor to keep me in pizza and beer.
And I just want food. Just food. My stomach is growling so hard right now. It has been going for a couple of minutes. Like, so crazy. Anyway, thank you, though, for hanging in with us, for listening to us, to those who do interact when you can, to the 4 people who had listened to our episode before I went to, like, at 3:30 a.m. I checked, and there were 4 people. Like, I see you. I don't know who you are. Don't worry. We can't track you that way, but I see you and I appreciate you.
And I want to give a shout out to Amy Lynn for always commenting on our Facebook page.
Oh, yeah.
We love to see that so much. Just to know, yes, I listened and here's a response to what you're...
Listen, we're actually pretty easy to be made happy. I'm telling you
it's a pretty low bar.
It is. It is. But even if you just listen, we still appreciate it.
Yes. Thank you, and we will talk to you in a week.
Bye.
Bye.